Welcome to this hour, Prophecy for the Last Hour. My name is Liz McGee. I have some teaching things I'm going to share this morning. I want to kind of talk about a lot of the keys. I talk a lot about keys to the kingdom, the mysteries, the sod level of understanding, all these things. But I'm going to approach it from a different angle. And my big word today is polysemous. One of the, as I'm saying quite often, and it's true, is that our Torah, the word, has multiple meanings. There's many levels of understanding. And this is sort of the principle of Jacob's ladder. There are many levels, rungs of the ladder, sort of wisdom, levels of understanding that you can have. And a word for this is called polysemous. So I want to give a couple of polysemous kind of examples. And then I want to go into, because my main point in doing all this is to talk about how time is used textually in the text. And it's one of my, I guess you could say, a little bit of a pet peeve at this point. So many people are like date setting all over the place because I mean, we're all ready to get out of here. I am as ready as anyone, but it's an extremely mystical concept. And I'm just going to try to shed some light on how mysterious and how deep the words that are used that refer to time are. So, but let's just start here in the concept of light and darkness, two biblical words, right? Very polysemous. So it says in Genesis 1:2 that darkness was over the face of the deep. Woo, very enigmatic kind of phraseology there. But let me go over just a couple of verses to kind of paint, because a lot of people will say, oh, the Bible contradicts itself. Well, it doesn't contradict itself. It is just by nature polysemous, that if you don't know there's different levels, and if you don't have all of the different levels understanding so you can see where, no, it's not a contradiction. It's just only kind of telling you, saying it from one rung or one POV or one level of meaning. It's the verse that is not meant to tell the whole scope of all Torah understanding. This way a lot of verses are written. That's why I'm against one verse theology, because no one verse ever makes the claim that it says everything that Elohim has ever said. So the light and darkness. In some, there could be an apparent contradiction. In Psalm 18:12, it says that he made darkness, he being Elohim, made darkness his hiding place. It says in Psalm 97:2, cloud and gloom surround him. Now, I'll tell you right now, cloud and gloom, we're not talking about literally what we think of clouds in the sky or doom. These are words actually that are representing metaphysical states of angelic orders. All right, I mean, basically, I'm telling you, it says that he makes his ministers as wings flying on clouds. He will be seen, he will come back surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. This is the word cloud is used. It's a very tightly packed, densely packed entity of some kind. In even the physical cloud, even though it doesn't look very dense, it's made up of something. All right. So cloud and gloom, which are associated with darkness, gloom, a gloomy day. It's a very dark. It's very, all right. So in Genesis 1:5, it says in this concept, let there be light. He saw that the light was good. He separated, this is all a progression in about 2 or 3 verses, and Genesis 1 verses 3 through 5. Let there be light. So be light. Elohim saw that the light was good. He separated the light from the darkness. So already we have now this concept that you have lightness and you have darkness. And if you go deeper into the verse, then in the beginning it says that, and darkness, in Genesis 1:2, before that it says, and darkness was over the face of the deep. So before you even had light, you had darkness. So in Genesis 1:2, it says darkness was over the face of the deep. Then in verse 3, we're told let there be light. So darkness came first, and then he created the light, and he saw that the light was good. He separated from the light and darkness. He called the light day, and he called the darkness night. Now, and then in Psalm 139:12, it says again, he says, even darkness is not dark to you. So here it's like in your mind a whole, okay, if darkness isn't dark, then what is it? It says night shines like day, and light and darkness are the same. So you're like all over the place with these very enigmatic phraseologies. But then, you know, sort of in the New Testament, we have verses in John. Well, in Luke 11:36, it says, if your whole body is full of light and no part of it is darkness. All right. So there is, even in the physical body, we know in the world there's day and there's night, but the analogies, the parabolic, talk that even in the body, in a person, if your whole body is full of light and is no part of it is in darkness. I just want to say again, well, let me come back to that point. In John 12:36, it says, to believe in the light, so you may be sons of the light, so that darkness will not overtake you. The one who walks in darkness does not know where he is going. So here I said in Psalm 139:12, that night shines like day and light and darkness are the same. So if they're the same, why is it saying in John 36 to believe only in the light, and that if you believe in the light, you will have no darkness? Because then, so, you know, it's like, which is it? So this is why, but this is why I've come to love the word. And I'm actually at great peace with all of this, because these are the great mysteries that it says a king that are it's a joy to figure these things out. And what I want to say to Ephraimite Christians, a lot of us, that's, if you're listening to my channel, I mean, basically, I really think most of us are Hebrew roots, you know, Essene type, Ephraimite, two-house kind of people coming back to Torah. And there's, to my mind, still a lot of blockages in people's understanding of what is good to read and what's not good to read. What should you fill your mind with in terms of all the writings that are in, and I've been through this, the scribal house of Judah. And my hope, and what's helping me, so I'm just passing it on, is to read all the writings, to understand the different types of writing, the different errors in which these things were written, and to believe really what the texts say about themselves, because and to understand the fullest understanding, as I'm going to demonstrate, is always going to be, all contradictions really begin to smooth themselves out when you can flush it out in the Hebrew. Now, again, I'm trying to get up. Hebrew's I'm trying to learn Hebrew. I mean, you know, right. You know, I kind of got the alphabet down, and some root words and such, but there's a lot of helps online and people that can help, but it is in the Hebrew that this text, and 90% of our problem in all these contradictions, a lot of it is in translation. But let me just say this about this whole concept of light and darkness, or day and night. What I've come to understand, and this is my point, you have to read, you cannot be anti-Semitic about the writings that are in the house of Judah. So that's what I mean, as an Ephraimite, we're going back and reading the writings. We're getting our Torah roots back. The point is, you're not going to go off and start reading, at this point, if your stage of reading Eastern mysticism, or reading Buddha, or reading you know, even the Gnostic texts, which I do not believe come from the pure stream of the house of Judah. I believe those are perverted, truly Gnostic in a bad sense. All right. The kind of hidden meanings that I am talking about are totally Torah-centric. And and I have started a blog, so people can, I always put it now in my little description box. So I hope you'll check out my blog, because I'm building this case. I really am now ready to come forward. I know, I don't want to say, you know, let's say it the Lord. I want to say I'm pretty sure that this is a true picture of the way the word is written, and I make no apologies. And I have a lot of this understanding of the keys, and I'm going to begin to really flush this out. It's taken me years to get to feel that my foundation is really solid enough, but be that as it may. So what I'm trying to say here is the writings that are in the house of Judah. Part of it, you have to, Kabbalah is a huge part. There is this oral Torah concept. You cannot run away from it. That is real and legitimate. All right. And I've been through this, the understanding our, and having respect for, as I find this so much, for our Torah scholars, be they the sages and the prophets of the Old Testament, be them the writers in the groups of the Essenes who wrote for us, and now we're coming back to us, the writings of the Dead Sea Scrolls, be they Pharisaical, the whole concept of the sages, or what we call the rabbis, the Mishnah and the Talmud. You can't just decide that these are not legitimate writings. All right, you have to become as skillful and expert as you can in all of these writings. And it doesn't do anyone any good to try to, it's like cutting off half your leg, separating parts of this whole body of scribal knowledge. Now, I'm talking to people who really want to dig in and want to be teachers, want to disseminate. You know, we all have different gifts and calling. So I'm not saying you have to. It's a lifetime. I mean, what else am I going to do? This is my point. I feel we're in the last generation. Yes, I expect Messiah to be coming. I'm not a rapture person, all right? I don't think that, you know, I'm not an evangelical rapture person, but I believe that there is definitely a resurrection. There is definitely an end game, as I'm going to show, to this age, and there is a beginning. There's a definite transition or time into the millennial rest, or the seventh day, or the millennial reign, all right? So in this light and darkness, going back to this concept, all right, because you really need to understand or get how the rabbis, and I say the rabbis because they are the ones who have kept the deep meanings of these texts going forward. And most Ephraimite Christians, if you understand now with the two houses and what happened when we really separated ourselves in terms of the knowledge stream that was already established for 4,000 years, because basically you had the whole Enochian time, about 2,000 years, which was integrated into the time of the Torah, and I'm going to show you this, of Moshe and forward. And now we've had these last 2 days, all right? So the point is, what I'm trying to say, from around 100 to 200, by 200 AD, there was such a break between the knowledge base of this new emerging quote unquote Christian church and the traditional Hebraic house of Judah. All right, they were no longer communicating with each other, basically. And so everything we have then since then, a lot of it, so much of it is quote unquote kind of made up, because they haven't been going back deep enough and checking. But then Judah did go on and continue to talk about and flush out and deeply, because they have tools of exegesis that we kind of lost and dished along the way. Have continued to grow in great wisdom and insight in a lot of the Torah. So, and the first thing in understanding a lot of these polysemous concepts is understanding, like in my book, the whole Pard's way of rightly dividing scripture, all right? But it's understanding that scriptures always has these different levels. So you're always got a physical level, light and darkness. We have day and night. Our whole physical universe runs on this concept of a day and a night. But there is the level of the soul. There are these words used exactly Similarly, now we're going deeper, we're going more, the kingdom of heaven is within, we're going deeper inside. This is now my new word, inner space. We're going into inner space with these concepts, into our soul life, which is as real, which is actually more real and is going to last, and I'm going to show you, way longer than anything of this physical universe. All right. But you have the darkness of the soul. You have the light of the soul. So these words are used parabolically, and they're used many times. And by the context, you can kind of understand. I mean, it's very obvious by the context. If they're talking, staying on a literal level, the sun rose in the daytime and they all got up and they went out. Okay, we're pretty literal. But if it's talking about, like in John, if your whole body is full of light and no part of it is darkness, well, that has to be a metaphysical or a allegorical parabolic way of talking about what's going on inside in your soul life. All right. And in the word body there, it's important to have Hebrew concepts of a lot of these words and to check your translation, because the word body is really a word that describes the first level, not only my physical body, see, but my nephesh soul life. The nephesh soul life, the animation part of me that animates my soul life is called the basar. So when you're using the word basar, because there's another word that will talk about body when it really is just talking about, the flesh. But this word, but it's important to have that distinction. And I've taught in a couple of videos, and we'll keep going back to there are different levels of our soul life. We have different levels of programs running, and we go up the ladder, and it gets more and more sophisticated, and our soul higher and higher connectivity to the supernal realms and to Elohim. All right. This is why we see some people who are just completely carnal, could care less about anything spiritual, live for today, don't want to know, don't want to believe, don't have anything to do with the concept of an afterlife, because they're just totally operating in, and by choice, of a nephesh basar soul life, just their body and their nephesh, their original animated soul life, which is all about, gratifying its desires. So it's got to have food and good food. And this is where the concept of the lust of the flesh. All right. We have other soul programs that we can begin to activate. And this is what Yahweh is always trying to get us, like, kind of to turn on. Click these windows. If you're something, you're contemplating, there comes a season in every person's life, usually, hope it does. And you can either turn it off and blow it off, or you can begin to follow these promptings. Like, isn't there more to life? Oh my gosh, is it just, we just eat, drink, and be merry and die? And what happens after we die? And as you begin, because remember, free will's huge and everything, he's not gonna, if the ruach is your ruach is your next level of spirit, this part of us is kind of interfaces. It's sort of like the program that's in between the total carnal base nature and the born again soul. We got this thing called spirit. This is what is the ruach, and it will prompt you. Oh, isn't there more to life? You lose a loved one, and then you all of a sudden start thinking about, where do we go when we die? And as those thoughts are playing through your brain, believe me, they're sending off energy waves. They're sending off code, and the ruach will pick it up and bring you up to the answers. Okay, the answers, it says, look up, your redemption draweth nigh. Our redemption is not in, and these are, I don't think it's so much literal, except in the sense of saying, if you're going to go back down into your carnal nature, you're not going to find the answer. But if you want the answers, keep looking up, keep, and then the spirit will bring you up higher and higher into levels of understanding. I hope I'm making sense, because there's real physics. This is what and in the allegorical sense of the picture that it's being painting is really true. So your nephesh, you can kind of shut it off. It's like your conscience. This is the part of us. It's the conscience. You do something really wrong and you go, that, and you know it. The conscience will prick you. Your ruach will tell you. You get this uneasy feeling. You can either ignore it, turn it off to the point where, the ruach that, you just after I suppose there's a grace period, like your screen will stay on for a certain season, but if there's no response, if you don't activate it, if you don't move your mouse or something, it's going to turn back off. This is what happens. But if you respond to the promptings, the Spirit will come and fill you with more and more and will begin to lead you. So this is the point. And this light is the light of men. All right. This is what this light, literally in a physics sense, and we know that Yeshua is the light of the world. This light that he is will begin to come into our consciousness and will begin to bring us out of the darkness and into the light. All right. Because darkness and light are the same to Yahweh. I mean, and this is what's so interesting and exciting, and this is what even science is being just, they know that even darkness is a form of light in the sense. And the darkness is in us. We are all now in gross dark, or let's say if you're unsaved and you're a believer has come into the light and is living now in this plane of existence, in this level of light. All right. The unbeliever is not. We were all born in sins. We were all born into this gross darkness, so to speak. But the point is, Yahweh, what he's telling, is in it. He's still there. You can't, in all of creation, and whether you're in the physical, whether you're in the soul, or whether you're actually in the spirit, you can't get rid of God. It's not like you can pretend you push him aside, but he's still there. It's like the low hum of your computer. Once your screen goes dark, and you turn it down and you even shut it down, it's all still in there. In the hardware, it's still there. All you got to do is turn it on and boom. So even if you are in gross darkness, the point is, and this is the beauty of it, this is why darkness was before the light. He is, and darkness has many levels of meaning. The minute you begin to cry out to him anytime or to accept, he's there, boom. That answer starts coming. It's a program that immediately will get activated and answered. So of course he's in the darkness and they're the same to him. All right. And he uses the darkness because people, and it says that one who walks in darkness doesn't know where he's going. And this is the point in life. If you ask, okay, well, where do we go after death? Well, the dark person doesn't have a clue. They don't know. If you knew where you were going, you wouldn't ask someone because you would be going and you wouldn't have any issues with it when you don't know where you're going. So that's why the darkness is just as much. He is just as much in the darkness as in the light because he's using all things. See, this is the brilliancy and the polysemous of the whole creation. There's so many levels of this thing. So the concept that it's a hologram, that it is a computer simulation, and there's many different levels and programs running all at the same time. So even in this whole world, the person sitting next to me on the bus or what can be in total darkness. At the same time, I'm there and I can be in total light. All right, real physics going on. And I just read in one of these, some statement, and I can't remember where it came from, where it says that when the believer who is operating in full light, that's what the angels see. I mean, they really see us as these beings of light and darkness or varying degrees. And this is another thing that, in Daniel, it talks about if you're going to shine like lights in the firmament, those who are wise will shine like lights in the firmament, like full star strength light. And there's different levels of brightness of stars. Anybody who goes out and looks at the night sky, some stars are brighter than others. Well, the point, yes, as much as you fill yourself with light down here, everything in the physical tells a story or gives a analogy of what's going on behind the veil or in the supernal realms or in heaven, whatever, in inner space, whatever. All right. So the third part of this after the soul life is the spiritual light. So even behind Yeshua, who is the light of the world in terms, and that's really in the of the soul life, this is what is so amazing when you study this out in the Hebrew. And I think I did a little teaching on this, like the word Bereshit, the first word of the Bible, in the beginning, which really means with beginning, the bet, because the very first word in our Torah is the word bet, is the letter bet, attached to Bereshit, to Reshit, okay, which means Rosh, which means beginning. So it's Bereshit. It's an enlarged B. So the text, the rest of the text, let me get my fingers lined up, is this big, but that B is this big. Like, who knew and why? Because it's telling you something. These are all little indicators of that there's something very important in this bet. And I told you that even when you permeate the letters, I think there's 7 or 8 letters in the word Bereshit, and you can make all these different words. The word or light is in there. So this is what we know about Yeshua. He he is not a begotten. It gets so deep. So what I'm just trying to say is there are so many levels to this, but the spiritual, the archetype of light, the largest archetype of the light is the light that is behind the light of the sun. And then there's a light that's behind the light that's of the light of the sun. Does that make sense? So I got 3 levels of light there. All right. And that's all in our text. And you can see that in the Hebrew, and you can see that as it gets flushed out by the context and by the letters used and by the way they're permeated and by the letter, the vowels, and all these different things that they do in the text. So one of my things is, even my Christian, we need to slow down a little bit. In my opinion, a lot of people are just kind of tossing out understandings really with half of the deck. We need to get the whole deck. And especially if you want to think that you're going to prophetically add anything to the dialogue. Okay, so one of these, so let me just say, back just to finish up quick on this light concept. So it is this spiritual light. Once you light your root, you respond to, let's say, the bigger questions about life. The Ruach gets activated, sends up a charge, literally, people, I'm telling you. And the heavenly realms, even this is what point angels are messengers. I believe that angels, in a lot of ways it's used, are really talking about brainwave patterns, like how supernal things respond. All right, this is in the only place you're going to find this level of deep understanding that is in the Kabbalah mystical text. All right, of the Jews. All right, and I'm not talking, not in the occultists who are hackers. They're hackers. They're like the sheep who have jumped over the fence, or the, what are they called? The hirelings that jump over the fence. They're totally worthless, and everything about them is going to be burnt up. But to the true seeker who lives a holy life, who is plugged into Adonai Eloheinu, it's a whole different. You're accessing a whole different stream. These are magnetic. See, this is what we're understanding, the fields and the forces that are going on out there. So we know now that there are all these different brain waves that we operate on. So to bring it up to speed in modern parlance, you have gamma, beta, alpha, theta, and delta waves that are affecting. So what I was just saying, you're starting with, I believe, the delta wave. If this is accurate, and I took this, somebody was saying this, and I think it's pretty accurate. The delta waves are very dense. They're very low hertz. It is that they can, and okay, so the ancients, our patriarchs, as I said before, did not use the words delta, theta, alpha, beta, or gamma. They used the words fire, air, water, earth, or let me put it, because it goes from the densest up: earth, water, air, fire, and the ether. Believe it or not, ether is the sea, refers to the sea in which Elohim is. We're all in a soup, but it's not a soup of water. It's just sort of it's hard to even explain. We live in, like it says, darkness is real to him, light. They're physicals, and I don't want to use the word physical. They have properties. There's essences, realnesses to these things. All right. So fire would be the lowest level of the body nefesh, soul life I was talking about. And isn't it interesting that that's the level that's going to get burnt up? He's going to use fire, and he's going to burn that up. And that in itself, see, we'll never understand until we understand that we're way past the literal in the sense of a campfire, we're talking about hidden processes which are alive and intelligent. And all right, I just want to try to make my last point. And so you'd have fire, air, water, and earth. You would have these delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma rays. But we are finding out too that these different waves of states of brain waves or conscious are extremely important. So if you're at the alpha wave, if you're operating alpha waves or beta waves or gamma waves, all right, you're full of light. You're much more brain active and brain higher. I don't, it kind of said sometimes the words, because I'm not a scientist either. So, but I know in theory, I am a theoretician, that much I know. I get the theory, and the theory is accurate, and the theory fits with what the texts are telling us. And a lot of it is deep knowledge, the mysteries that are in there that have known by our ancients that, actually Adam knew all this stuff. If he was in the garden before the Father and he could see, he and the Father were talking and had complete open, this point, see the whole concept of the garments. There was so many barriers. You can't look up in the sky and see Elohim today. There's just too many barriers. There's too many garments. There's too many layers. There's just too much in between us. But you can, this is the point, you can ascend. See, this is why sometimes, these words these New Agers use, and it really irritates me, or the occultists use, because they're using biblical words a lot, but they're profaning them. Oh, it makes me so an ascended master. Oh my gosh, what's he ascending to? He's really descending down into more gross darkness. But the true Ruach-filled believer who is really tapped into wisdom, higher wisdom, is ascending. So, anyways. So what I wanted to say this point with earth, air, wind, and fire, because the text uses words like eye, ear, hand, or foot to try to explain some of the attributes of Elohim. But we have to understand that we're not talking about real eyes, ears, hands, or feet. We're just using abstractions. We're just using words as symbols to try to explain things. But the flip side is when it's using water, fire, wind, and earth, we have to understand when he says he makes his messengers the winds, his ministers glowing fire. See, what he's talking about, or the text is telling us, Elohim has, as I say, with our brain, messengers. I really believe that the angels are actually, and they go up and down, and they can, these are processes. They're living, intelligent processes. They're his messengers. So when you start asking for deeper answers in life, or even a prayer or something that is truly, people, if we could see all the fields that are operating around us, we would see all this. But so what we're saying is don't ever think that what you're being spoken of is actually wind or fire in the natural. See, but their names are reflecting the essence of their character. So, prerequisites, listen to my YouTube. I have a series on angels, explaining, unpacking words. There are the fiery angels. Well, what are we talking about? Messengers, he makes his messengers the winds. He has messengers, Malachim, that are the winds. Wind is another code word for air, which is another code word for spirit. All right. So we have to understand that these texts are using metaphysics, and I hate to use the metaphysics because that's a word, but it just means physics that are beyond our natural physics. So all that being said, I want to move here into this concept of time, because this is really interesting. So time is about as polysemous a concept as you can get in the text. And one of the things that the rabbis have done is they have taken the 6,000 years of Adamic history. Now, most people know, not too many people are going to argue with me, that we really kind of flushed out or lived through. We're at the end of 6,000 years of human Adamic history on the planet, which is only one little tiny piece of time in this whole huge world of time. All right. And Elohim is even outside of time. Time is a creation. Time is something that, and he made time with the constellations. All right, so that's like the clock face. Like, so if you have time and you need a way to show people time, which is, you just see he just put a huge clock in the, called the constellations. All right, but above the constellations are the actual archetypes, or the actual how do I even say that, you know, Elohim who is moving the time. All right, so let me just go to this. The rabbis and I have a YouTube on this, and it's called the Olam Haba. Olam Haba, this is a concept of the world to come. Time, they have divided the 6,000 years into three, 2,000 years each, which makes a triad of three sets of 2,000 years. So the first 2,000 years starts from the fall till about the time of the calling of Abraham at about 2,000. Oh, before I even do that, let me just start with this. One of the things you immediately learn about time, it's polysemous, so we have a day, 24-hour day, we know this, but we also have a day called a day of the Lord, or 1,000 years. Psalm 94 talks about, there's so many scriptural witnesses that 1,000 years is like a day. You have 2 Peter 3:8, or again, it states it says, with Yahweh, a day is like 1,000 years. It's again in Barnabas, chapter 15, verse 4. It says, the day of the Lord shall be as 1,000 years. So we have now, right now, we've moved past the literal 24-hour day, and many of our verses and concept will use time as a day, and meaning 1,000 years. All right. So this is what the rabbis have. They have these first 2 days, the first 2,000 years is called a time of chaos. All right, and this is where, again, you had, you know, the world before the flood. You had the whole watcher angel incursions. You had what happened in the garden, the incursion with the angel Gabriel. You had Nimrod again. Well, no, he came right after. So you had everything that happened, because in the call of Abraham, there was let me put it this way, they started the whole behavior up again. Even worse, it says, if you read all your texts and put the story together, after the flood, Nimrod went right back to it, and all the hybridization, a lot of the crazy stuff that was going on was right there. Okay, so there was still chaos, but they call that the time of chaos. The next 2,000 years, which is from the year 2000 to 3000 up to 4000, they call this the time of Abraham, or the time of the Torah, HaTorah. This is where the nation gets called out, Moshe. You have the Torah is given to a people group with all of this deep understanding. All right, this is what's really important to understand. This time of HaTorah is like the Renaissance time for Torah, and it went up until about 2,000 to about 4,000. All right, we know when Yeshua came, this is the point. Now it started a new 2 days. So we had our first 2 days of chaos, our second 2 days of Torah, 2,000 years, and then they have from the year 4,000, when at the time of Yeshua, until where we are now, 6,000 year mark is in the days of Messiah. Now I have a whole teaching that flushes this out more on the world to come. Now, one of the things that's very interesting about this time, and all right, let's see, where should I start with this? All right, because everyone's trying to figure out, the scriptures are pretty clear on many levels, literal and others, that Messiah comes at the 6,000 mark. Now, I have another teaching and another deep understanding. If you need to, why the 2 comings of Yeshua, you need to understand this in the point of view. He is working out salvation for the nations, for all the peoples, not just the Jews and the house of Israel, but for the nations also. In these last 2,000 years, the rabbis call the days of Messiah, which is really interesting, because these are the days of the preparation before Messiah shows up. Now, when I read the sages, the Torah, I go in with my eyes open. I know they don't as a group, acknowledge Yeshua HaMashiach as Messiah ben Joseph, as the first coming, as the suffering servant and the shepherd of Israel. All right. That's a historical fact. All right. But I'll tell you a little secret. Many of them do understand it, but it's just an interesting thing. Many of them remain within their box, so to speak, even with the understanding. Many Kabbalists have come to understand that Yeshua as Messiah ben Joseph. And a lot of it has to do with us being so off the wall. Who in their world would want to associate with these Gentile Ephraimites who, there's so many pieces of the puzzle we just aren't up to speed on. All right, but we're getting there. The two houses are getting closer and closer. And this is what all the prophets have been saying. We're going to get really close at the end, and it's going to dawn on everyone. This is, the restoration. I believe this is all part of that. In one day, he will bring the people out, because it's going to get so clear. There's going to be this moment. If you talk about singularity, I mean, there's going to be a moment. It's like, oh, aha, I get it. I see it all now. All right. But what I want to make my point is that why it's so important to look closely in the Hebrew at the scriptures, especially with time. So there is a verse in Proverbs 8:30. There is a verse. It says, and I was reading this in a book called the Bahir, which is a book, a very ancient text. It's a great, but that is on the mystical level, that uses a lot of, it's very encrypted, but because I'm beginning to understand the language and the encrypted, I can get it now. The Torah is saying, well, in Proverbs 8:30, it says, I was with him as a craftsman. I was his delight for a day, frolicking him at every time. And I looked it up in my little program, Bible Hub program on my computer, and lo and behold, all the translations were so different from this. And I'm like, well, now wait a minute. So I ran upstairs, I got my Septuagint, and I thought, well, maybe this is the way it reads in the Septuagint, and it's not even in the Septuagint this way. This is literally a word-for-word translation from the Hebrew in the text. That's why I say it, and what it's telling us. So let me, first of all, this refers to wisdom. In the whole context of Proverbs 8:30, we are talking about wisdom. We are talking about, I've been through this, the feminine personification, the feminine aspect, because he created the binary system, male on one side, female on the other. These are archetypal programs that he instituted. All right. And this is so important to understand. And if you don't understand it from the top, yes, you are going to stay in gross darkness, and you're going to go into goddess worship. Okay. But then I'm telling you right now, the text, that's not at all what it's saying. But anyways, wisdom was with him as a craftsman. And this is what we know. This is that wisdom was at his side. All right. And this is Elohim creating and making the worlds and in being, all right. And it says, I was his delight for a day. See, this is the point in the Hebrew. And it does say this literally. It says a day. The word day is repeated twice. And it is the word, but you wouldn't, all the translations, except for about 3 translations out of about 20 on the page you can see, really only about 4 of them out of 20 were, and they were very obscure ones. Like one is the God's Words translation, or another one was the N-E-T, capital N-E-T translation. That was correct. That was correctly. None of them translated for a day, literally. All of them changed it into being, I was his delight for a season, or like for a time, I was his delight daily. They've all changed it to the word daily, instead of realizing that it's very specific. You cannot lose sight of how specific every little jot and tittle. You cannot change it. You have to take it at every jot and tittle and see what it's saying. So it's a day. So flickering before him at every time, and none of them were translating the word time, which is the word every. In this translation, uses the word every, which is the word kol, which means all. So it's all in the word time, eth. So so what we have in here is, I was his delight for a day, literally, frolicking before him at all time, in between. Now, why that's important. All right. So then I keep reading. It goes, the Torah is saying for 2,000 years. I, feminine, the wisdom was in the bosom of the Blessed Holy One as his delight. Now, who would have known, unless you knew how to parse, rightly divide your scriptures, that this is a reference in time to 2,000 years. Was a day of the Lord is as 1,000 years. 1,000 years is a day. Then it goes on. The verse therefore says a day, a day. And it goes on to say, each day of the Blessed Holy One is 1,000 years, as it is written. And it quotes Psalm 94. 1,000 years in your eyes is as but yesterday when it is past. From then on, it is at times, as the verse states, frolicking before him at all time. So in this little verse from Proverbs, you have some of the most enigmatic references to time. All right. And we have a concept here, and I'm not even going to go into put it into context in the sense of that wisdom. And personally, I'm not going to say that I'm 100% correct, because personally, at first glance, what I think it's referring to is that for a time and a time, I was in the bosom of the Blessed Holy One in the first 2,000 years, during all the time of chaos. All right. But so you have a time of, see, because the Shekinah, when you understand again more fully, she is very hidden. Many times the root has to go into hiding, so to speak. This is in the text. This is a concept because of the gross demonic manifestations. It's just not safe for her, quote unquote, to come out of the house. This is in there. All right. We live in one of these seasons today where there's gross darkness again in the land. And even as a believer, you feel you need, it's not like you hide your light, but the point is, this is what it's telling us in a lot of ways. Sometimes when you live in a season and where your culture has gone really south and it is really manifesting more darkness than light, this is what we know today. I mean, if you're not with me on this one, then I guess you really don't have your eyes wide open at all, period. But because the demonic has the upper hand today. And just look at our government in so many categories. So this is why it says to go in your house and is to be very circumspect, because they are serious, dangerous times. If you live in a time, there's a lot of pitfalls. There's a lot of warfare. There's a lot coming at you. All right. There's other seasons, and the Bible talks about it, when they had peace in the land and they were all living in bounty, and there was plenty of oil, wine, and grain. And Shekinah was out and open. Everybody was this in America at times. When this nation was first forming, my gosh, this is one of the famous sayings that came out of a Frenchman who came over here and said, America is booming because America basically is good. We really did get off. Our nation really did get off on the right foot. Or let me put it this way. Yes, we know that there's always tears. There was a lower belly level of darkness, but goodness was predominant. All right. And we really did have a season. Just look at of great light. Light was more prevalent. I hope I'm making my point. So you have to know what season you're living in, obviously. But what I wanted to say is that, and before him at all times. So even if Shekinah or the Spirit is more hidden, because right now we live in a time where, it's very hidden. I don't want to say, when I say this quote unquote, she, the Ruach, the feminine, these are all things, I hope you're up to speed on all of this kind of concept, is hidden. People understand you have to go looking. You have to dig a little deeper. Even people go to our churches today and find out that people aren't walking the walk per se. They're talking the talk sometimes, but they're not walking the walk. All right. So Shekinah is more hidden, versus when you live in a time of revival, which is, we are going to, where just boom. This is like the early church living in a time of like an atom bomb of light hit. When Yeshua was here, he died his resurrection. He imparted so much spiritual power to his disciples for about 100 years, 150 years. It was like an atom bomb of light had just hit the planet and it just went everywhere. All right. So I hope that kind of made point. Now, what I want to say here is, now going back to this whole concept of, how we live in what they call the days of Messiah. Now, this is a quote I found out of the, well, here, I'm just going to give this to you. This was in the Jewish Encyclopedia where, I mean, so if you want to check me, this is a very Hebraic concept. It says the verse, 1,000 years in our sight are but as yesterday, Psalm 94. Having suggested the idea that the present world of toil is to be followed by a sabbatical millennium, the world to come. Of these 6 millenniums, were again divided as in Parism into 3 periods. All right, so what's what I said, that they have divided the 6 millenniums into 3 periods. The first 2,000 years devoid of the law, all right, chaos. The next 2,000 years under the rule of the law, Torah, and the 2,000 years preparing amid struggles and through days of catastrophes for the rule of the Messiah. Now, this is, like I said, this was from an article on eschatology from the Jewish Encyclopedia. Now, which is so interesting. So because they are in exile, this is the point now. Once Yeshua came, it ended an age and an era. Israel, or Judah, the temple was destroyed. The land, Jerusalem was, as it says in Micah, was plowed like a field. I mean, they were just decimated. There was nothing left standing. People, places, towns, everything was plowed and dispersed, and they went into a huge exile. But they understood that this is all part of the plan too. But these are the prep, from their point of view, the preparation days for coming of Messiah. Because again, Messiah ben David is really for the Jews, and then it is the culmination for all of us as the setting up of the kingdom. All right, there will be a time of visible manifestation where the light will be so bright. I mean, the point is, and evil will be done away with, so we can all live and do Torah and you know, see how this thing live for a season with this thing as it could have always been in a perfect. Now, I want to go to another quote here. I have, this is from a footnote from a English translation of a tract from the Talmud. Okay, the Talmud says Messiah will come within that period, meaning these 2 days, the days of Messiah. He should have come at the beginning of it, and they're referring back to the day up at 4,000 mark when we know Yeshua did come. All right, the delay is due to our sins. It should be obvious that the Messiah who should have come at the beginning, of the 2,000 year period of these last 2 days, is in fact Yeshua, who did come then. The delay is not his coming, but of our recognizing him. And this delay is indeed due to our sins. So here on a footnote in the Talmud, you have, and these would be Torah scholars, these will be high rabbinic or Torah scholars who see this now. They get this. And they are gently trying to bring their people into a realization. Believe me, was this something, you know, you'd be surprised how many Jews are actually working to try to bring their nation, their people as a group, as a whole, to understand that, yes, Messiah ben Joseph did come, and he is coming. It's the same person. He will come again as Messiah ben David. But let me just read that again. Messiah will come within that period, because this is what the scriptures do tell us. He should have come at the beginning of it. All right. The delay is due to our sins. It should be obvious that the Messiah who should have come at the beginning of the 2,000 year period is in fact Yeshua, who did come then. The delay is not of his coming, but of our recognizing him. And this delay is indeed due to our sins. I mean, that's just amazing. So, like I said, as we all get more and more into the light, as we all ascend, so to speak, this knowledge is coming out more and more. Now, I want to end here in a real mind bending when you talk about time. All right, because again, this is what happens when people, the literalist fundamentalists who just want to say that the whole creation, the whole thing was done within 24-hour periods of 6 days. You know, it's just not, it's not really what the text says. All right, it doesn't really say that. No, no Jewish or Hebraic scholar of their salt would say that, because it's not true. It's not in the text. So let me say this. There are many verses that allude, you know, will tell us clearly and frankly that, as it says, you know, as you saw Messiah come, so shall he come again. As you saw him leave, you know, so shall he come again, that there is a second coming. Barnabas 15:5 says that after the Son comes, at this point, at the second coming of Messiah, the era of lawlessness is to cease, when he judges the unrighteous and changes the sun, moon, and stars. Now, this is a very exciting verse in the sense because it's acknowledging that the sun is going to come and that the end of the lawless is to cease. We cannot have a peaceable kingdom until we get rid of these wicked. It's a God-sized job. It's we need the help of Elohim and his angels and the elect that are ready, that this whole little scenario that's going to happen, there's going to be like this perfect storm, and it's going to happen, and there will be a battle, and it'll go on in all dimensions, but the end of it will be that the wicked will be removed, which is exactly what Enoch, in the first chapter, Enoch testifies to and states. So they're all tracking. And it says when the sun, moon, and stars will be changed, there's a whole piece of the puzzle where we're understanding the sun, moon, and the stars refers to the influence of evil that works, these watcher angels. A lot of our problem, as Paul says, that we're warring against are principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places, which, like I've been saying, in different realms, there are, even in the, especially in the realm of the firmaments, the heavens, where we have this the sun, moon, and the stars. All right, they have to be cast down, removed from their positions. All right, it's another reason why time is so hard to figure out. All right, because, and there's another verse, and it says, you know, this was the whole point of one of the dreams that Joseph got, where he saw himself and his brothers and sisters and his mother and his father sort of becoming the sun, moon, and stars that were, and his seed that was going to replace all of this, all of the wicked that in all the different dimensions have place. All right. Now, there's a verse in Deuteronomy 30:20 that talks about the sun. It says, he is thy life and thy length of days. Now, again, unless, you know, enigmatic, but unless you had the Hebraic understanding of how these idiomatic, enigmatic phrases and words work, he is thy life is again a reference to the sun. See, it says that Yeshua was the light of life, that he is the life, that life is in him. He says, I lay down my life, but I have power to take it up again, because he is L'chaim. He is the life. He is life, all right? So he is thy life, and it does refer to the sun. Everything has been given to him. Everything that's in these realms, that includes time, all right, because the time is a creation. When you get into the high upper heavens, at this point, there is no time, all right? But you come, because I'm referring to a Kabbalistic tree life concept, Yeshua, and all of the worlds that it says when earth becomes your footstools, he's put everything under him, all right? So I'm trying to say even time will be subjugated again to him, all right? He is thy life and thy length of days. And another translation says, this is the words for Olam Haba, which means the world to come. Now, the world to come, which we would call our eternal life, we would call heaven, we would call, you know, whatever, the promise to us if we live righteously and are born again, get at the end, Olam Haba. It is also a word that means literally, it says the 8th day. So this is also, if you're scripturally literate, you understand that there is a day after we have this 1,000-year reign, this one day millennial day, the Sabbath rest. We will be part of the 8th day. All right. Now let me read you something again out of a text, a Jewish text, talking about time, because everybody's trying to figure out these jubilees. And we know that there's a pattern. He says this is the 7 times 49 or 50 years, a total of 343 years. The first temple stood for 410 years, and during this period Israel observed 7 jubilees. Some of this math. This relates to the concept of sabbaticals of creation. All right. This is how deep the understanding for time is in the true Hebraic sage mind. When they have all the information. All right. They don't cut themselves off. And what I'm trying to say, they know a lot more about Yeshua than we think they do. All right. Their issue with us is not Yeshua as much as it is our quote unquote Gentile Jesus. And someday I'm going to flesh that out some more. But we're getting closer and they're getting closer. And so there is a pattern of 7 that's established in Genesis and throughout. Again, 7 days equals 1 week. 7 years equals 1 Shemitah, or sabbatical, or Sabbath year. All right. So again, I'm just working on the word day. You can take the word year and the word time, and they have also multiple levels of meaning. But 7 times 7, or 49 years, equals 1 jubilee, which is a week, which is 1 week of weeks. So you have 70 times 7 equals 490 years, which is what they call a great jubilee. All right. So their math, they're categorizing, I guess, of time is way deeper than I think most people really understand. And now I'm going to read it to you. All right. So this also relates to the concept of sabbaticals of creation, where each jubilee period consists of, okay, we know what a sabbatical down here, a jubilee cycle, is 49 years. But did you know where each jubilee period consists of 49,000 years? So once you get out of the physicality here and into time, we just jumped from 49 years of a person's life, so to speak, into a sabbatical, a creation week, sabbatical of creation, where each jubilee period consists of 49,000 years. There will be 7 such jubilee periods. Never break time apology, but here now there will be 7 of these jubilee periods of 49,000 years, and the universe will therefore last a total of 343,000 years. Now, these are divine years, each one consisting of 365 and 250 earthly years. Thus, the total time between the initial expanse and final collapse of the universe will be 125, I guess we're into billion, 287 million and 500,000 years. So yeah, so this figure of base rounding it off of 125 billion years is very close to the scientific calculation of how old the universe is. After this period, the universe will become completely spiritual. And interesting. So it came out of spirituality. It is going back into spirituality. This is why the concept of the 8th day. One of the aspects of the future world will be the extreme longevity on the part of mankind. Regarding this period, it is foretold, as a child, one shall die at 100 years old. All right, Isaiah 65:20. According to one rabbi, Isaac of Orcho, the lifespan will have become so extended that one who dies at the age of 100 will be considered like a child currently dying at the age of 3. Thus, the normal lifespan will be approximately 33 times its present value, or around 2,000 years. All right. But the same rabbi, sage, says, furthermore, states that these will be divine years. So the human lifespan will eventually be extended to the order of 80 million years. So if that's not everlasting life, all right, or eternal life, 80 million years, and maybe a whole new cycle will start. What I'm trying to say is this 24-hour day, we already know, I just explained, can also signify a day with the Lord, 1,000 years. It also can go into its pattern of the week, the Shemitah, the Jubilee, the Great Jubilee, and now we are into cycles of creation, and we are now at the end where they have calculated that human lifespan after the millennium on the 8th day can extend anywhere up to, let me put it this way, no shorter than 80 million years. So, I mean, who knew? So when Yeshua says that we will know the season, but not necessarily the day or the hour, I'm just erring on the side of prudence and saying, be ready. Our redemption does draw nigh. I think the elect should be very busy about reading all the texts, mastering, becoming a master Torah scholar in all of the writings, and so that you can have as much light be ascended, so that you're really going to shine. When the sun, moon, and stars are going to be replaced with the elect, that your star, you're going to really shine for those 80 million years. So on that note, blessings, and may Yeshua love you and keep you always in his light.